Okay, so good morning. This meeting is being recorded. By staying in this meeting, you're giving consent to being recorded. If you do not consent to being recorded, please exit out of the meeting and contact the host, which is me, separately, and just let me know if you'd like to see if you'd like to receive the link for this after. Okay, so welcome to session 4 of the Section 106 Training and Forum. My name is Kathleen Philp, and I'm one of the Senior Environmental Protection Specialists for FEMA Region 1 EHP. For those of you who are unable to attend the first 3 sessions that we had, as I mentioned, we are recording these sessions. So if you want to put your email in the chat, I can send you the links to the previous sessions. Additionally, we'll be sending these links to VAOT, the Stockbridge-Muncie community, and the SHPO if they would like to post these, all 4 of the sessions on their websites. So just a little background. This training has been organized as part of the treatment measures to resolve the adverse effects under Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act for the DR 1995 VAOT Memorandum of Agreement. And just a recap for everyone on the topics that have been covered in the 3 previous sessions. So during the first session, we discussed several topics, including FEMA's mission, environmental and historic preservation responsibilities, the EHP applicability to FEMA's programs, both disaster and non-disaster. We gave an overview of the National Historic Preservation laws. And in the second session, we discussed the 4-step process. That's Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. In session 3, we talked about FEMA Section 106 review process, our streamlining techniques, and then we turned the floor over to the Stockbridge-Muncie community to provide their experience with the Section 106 process, the need to consult before work has been completed, as this might impact archaeological or cultural resources, and the importance of maintaining the government-to-government relationship when consulting with the tribes. Today, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Laura Trishman, the Vermont State Historic Preservation Officer, who will do her presentation on the SHPO experience with the Section 106 process. So I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen right now. And Laura, I will pass this over to you. And thank you again, everyone, for coming today. And Laura, we appreciate you presenting today. So I will turn off my camera and leave it to you if you want to share your screen.
Thanks, Kathleen. I've not shared in Zoom, so this is taking me a second. That works.
You're good. We can see it.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, let's get rolling with this. Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you, FEMA. Thank you, VTrans, and the Stockbridge-Muncie. You know, we have a great collaboration with everybody, but as with everything, we can always do a little bit better. And trainings like this definitely help us coordinate and get organized and know what everyone is doing so that we can be more helpful. So first, I want to talk about the fact that the State Historic Preservation Office in Vermont is also called the Division for Historic Preservation. We are located in the Agency of Commerce and Community Development in the Department of Housing and Community Development. Everything that's happening in the state of Vermont project-wise passes over our desks. And the primary team that does that consultation is headed up by Scott Dillon, who is also an archaeologist. He's the senior review coordinator for consultations. And his team includes Yvonne Benny-Bask, who's an archaeologist, Greg Sosinski, who's an architectural historian, does above ground. And we are honored to have Polly Allen working with us for a number of months. She also does the above ground architecture. Also on that team is an essential person. She's our preservation administrative coordinator, Lindsay Pacheco. Everything that comes in through our office is initially touched by Lindsay, And as it leaves our office, it is also touched by Lindsay. So she's a real organizer. Also involved in project review is the state archaeologist, Dr. Jess Robinson, and the state architectural historian, you may have known, was Devin Coleman for over 12 years. But Elizabeth Peebles is taking over that position starting in September. She's on leave right now, so we've got a couple hats that several of us wear to cover that position for her. The historic preservation regulatory pathways that come through the Division for Historic Preservation include Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. So any federal funded undertaking. We also review 22 VSA Chapter 14, which is the Vermont Historic Preservation Act. So this means any state funding or state involvement. And then, of course, one of our big ticket items is Act 250 for the Natural Resources Board and Section 248 for the Public Utilities Commission. And the reason I'm mentioning all of these is because of the whopping chart where we are tallying up how many reviews we're looking at annually. So we're close to 3,000 last year. We had a dip during COVID, but things are picking up immensely. And so our Section 106 reviews are rising close to 2,000 a year. And to help make those work better, we've created a number of programmatic agreements. We have about 20 of them with different federal agencies. We have memorandum of agreements with state agencies, and then we do memorandum of agreements when there's an adverse effect that has to be mitigated. So we're regularly doing these agreement documents. They're relatively easy. There's a template that goes with them, and it stipulates what's to be done, why it's to be done, and keeps a record so we all know what we're supposed to be doing. I mentioned programmatic agreements because the prototype programmatic agreement that we have with FEMA and the Vermont Emergency Management is really one of the most efficient PAs that we have. And one reason I find it so efficient is because we keep adding to it. We have added appendices and allowances as things come up. The big part of it are undertakings that do not require SHPO review. So the first tier allowances can be reviewed by anybody, and there's detail in the appendices that tell you what ground disturbing activities are first tier, what buildings and structures, roads, what activities are taking place under tier 1 that can just be identified as exempt by anyone. The tier 2 allowances to VTRAM speak for federal highway. This is your screened activities. This is where you need to have somebody who is 36 CFR qualified to review it and say, yes, that is an allowance that we can have under this agreement and sign off on that. And again, there's also detail to give you direction on what activities fall under that. We have a really robust Appendix H, that is Vermont Hazard Mitigation Assistant acquisitions and demolitions. We've got a pretty involved flow chart that tells you how to do that entire process. As a result of the mitigation that Kathleen was talking about, we have Appendix G related to the utilizing design, bid, building projects for AOT. And I wanted to bring out the fact that we have continued to add to it, not just the appendices, but we've revised things. We've revised the generators and utilities, particularly in light of the disasters we've had. We've revised the culvert systems that are exempt. So we were getting a number of reviews like this, and we know culverts in Vermont are undersized. Pipe culverts like this that have been destroyed by flooding or just are big metal pipes. These are not something we want to be reviewing. So we just recently in September added an allowance. So we don't have to be reviewing these. But I do want to call your attention to stone culverts are not exempt. And in fact, VTrans produced great stone transportation culverts of Vermont, multiple property documentation form. And we actually have stone culverts that are listed on the National Register in Vermont. So not all culverts are exempt. So that's why the programmatic agreement is really a useful document that we refer to all the time to make sure we understand what's exempt, what are the allowances, and how things should be reviewed. So consultation with the Vermont SHPO, all project review consultation must come from the federal agency, not directly from any other entity, unless there's another federal agency, they figure out who's the lead agency. But we are consulting with the federal agencies. They are our clients. Per the PA that we have with them, individual and public assistances have a 15-day consultation because we're trying to move those through faster. Hazard mitigation grant program and non-disasters get the regular 30-day consultation. And then, of course, emergency project notifications need to come from FEMA, but I do want to give a shout out that VTrans very often sends us notification as well when emergencies are being declared and they need to go work on a particular bridge or road or culvert. And those, when we get the paperwork, we have a 3-day consultation. So we've got to turn things around pretty fast. Despite things needing to come directly from the federal agency for the official consultation, we encourage being contacted early and often, ask questions, bring projects before us as a heads up. We're always willing and able to make the time to review some of these things. We have found the more we know when we get an official submittal, the faster we can move things through. And also, when you submit, it is best to have all the necessary parts. And of course, sometimes archaeology or something's happening so you can't get everything you need, but you need to tell us what is missing and when we can anticipate it. It will help with our review so that we don't start floundering around being like, well, I don't have this. Do we have this? Has it come in? And that leads me to something I'm going to repeat a couple times. Do not ever submit anything directly to staff. Send it to accd.projectreview@vermont.gov. This is where Lindsay's going to be going through what comes in, the submittals. They meet 3 times a week for several hours. They assign the projects. Most projects get an architectural historian and an archaeologist. And this is how we can make sure we know the consultation period. So what is needed to begin the formal review with us? FEMA consultation letters, which I have to give a shout out, are some of the best we get from federal agencies. They're very precise, they're very detailed. Or you can give a project review cover form that we have up on our website. With some of our other federal agencies that we have PAs with, we have a specific project review form that goes with that PA. All of our PAs are listed up on our website in the PA library. Of course, we need a project description, and the more detail you can give us, the faster we can move things, the more we understand. We need a very defined APE. We need maps, location maps, site maps. Google's wonderful for us, but don't zoom in so we have no idea where we are, because a lot of Vermont from Google looks alike. Photographs, any digital that you can give us of the site location and the historic resources that are being surveyed, assessed. or even questioned whether they are eligible or not. Project plans. I know sometimes you don't have project plans right away at VTrans, but it really helps anything you can give us. And as those project plans keep changing, evolving, getting more detailed, it really helps to keep submitting them to us. And any supporting documentation, archaeology resource assessments, engineering reports, architectural inventory forms, cost estimates, safety reports, all these factor into how we're reviewing and what matters. And again, an incomplete submittal, we will contact you and say, we do not have all the parts, and that suspends the 30-day review or the 15-day review. If it's an emergency situation and we don't have everything, we'll immediately get on the phone and start chatting with you and figure out what to do. We don't want to hold up an emergency review just because we don't have an archaeology resource assessment yet. We might be able to do some spot assessments. We might be able to do site visits ourselves to help move things along. But otherwise, we do not want to suspend reviews. So that's why it's very helpful to have as much as you can submitted to us initially, and also letting us know what's coming. Another problem that we have that I want to call out is quite often we will get submittals directly, parts of submittals, I should say, directly from consultants, archaeologists, engineers. We don't always know what project that is. So it's really important that if you've got a consultant working on some of the submittal, that they use the same cover form or consultation letters and submit really through you and then feed it to us. Otherwise, we get delayed because we don't know what something is. So I know you've seen this a number of times, and several of us have this up on the wall, but it really helps to remember the whole process for Section 106. This is where you're establishing and undertaking, you're notifying the SHPO and the TIPO, and we really respect the TIPO as government to government. The SHPO office should not be the one initiating consultation with the TIPO. That belongs to the federal agency, or if it's been delegated to VTrans in consultation with the federal agency. But we do not do that. We, of course, will share information and have meetings and conversations with them. They have a wonderful perspective that adds to the consultation process, but we are not reviewing on their behalf, and we cannot tell you what to anticipate from their reviews, and also vice versa. So we very much respect each other's role in the 106 process, and we do work together. And identifying other tribes and other consulting parties. Other consulting parties are communities, historical societies, certified local governments. We have 20 of those in Vermont right now. The number seems to be increasing, which is wonderful. Every time we get a new one, we notify the cultural resource team at VTrans. And then, of course, the public. We don't enjoy, as I guess no one does, getting the phone call of, I didn't know about this project and now they're ripping up my front yard because they're extending the sidewalk and things like that. So it's better to have the public very, very much involved and aware of what's going on. Identifying historic properties. This is where you need to create your APE. And I know Kathleen's gone over all of this, but there's a couple points here I really want to stress. The APE matters. And doing the historic resource ID or identifying the historic properties really matters too. These are the properties that are going to be potentially impacted by this project. And this is where the consultation also starts really ramping up with the SHPO, the TIPO, the other tribes and consulting parties. And then assessing the adverse effects. Often we get projects coming to us and it's like, okay, we We know this is going to be an adverse effect, but we need to figure out how it won't be. And that's doable because we can together work to avoid, minimize, reduce impacts so that it could be no adverse effects. However, if it's an adverse effect, truly, we cannot avoid that. We have to address it as an adverse effect. And we can then figure out how to mitigate it. It doesn't mean the project can't happen. We just have to study it and figure out how to mitigate that, avoid, minimize. And that also includes a few more steps, of course, notifying the Federal Advisory Council and creating a memorandum of agreement document. And I will say we almost always agree on what the mitigation should be, and we try not to make it onerous, but we do need to make sure that we're consistent with what mitigation is. So I really want to stress defining the area of potential effect. The bigger you can go, so it passes the straight face test, is really, really helpful. Be generous so that you know your area. Include all known or potential areas. And this includes not just your project site, but your staging areas, your access areas, your borrowing and dump sites. If you're looking at a bridge, the APE would not just be the bridge that you're going to be replacing, because you know you're going to have to bring in a bunch of trucks and equipment, and you're going to need that staging area. And how are you going to get to that access? The project that resulted in this training, the access was not included and initially in the reviews, and then it changed over the course of the project. And potential archaeological sites significant to Native Americans were impacted. And borrowing and dumping sites also should factor into the APE. If the project plans change, the review needs to happen again. And it doesn't need to be a full-blown 106 review submittal like before. It's here's what's changed, here are the project plans, here's our recommendation or determination for the impacts, and we think we're still good to go. But as things change, we continuously need to be updated and reviewing and consulting. And again, the more often you come with us, to us, the better. And we are more than happy, particularly the archaeologists love to do this, is go out and look at these sites. Sometimes we can clear sites just by going out and looking at them with your cultural resource team at VTrans and FEMA archaeologists. We've done that quite a lot too. So as I said, APE matters. And if you're replacing a bridge, don't do it just to be the confines of the bridge, because it's a much larger area. But this is your direct effect. And then indirect effect, or this one could actually be argued to be somewhat of direct effect. The replacing of the Champlain Bridge with Chimney Point State Historic Site. This is a very significant architectural site, Native American site, Revolutionary War site. So there were a lot of factors that led into the indirect and direct effects of that particular project. And it was a very generous APE. And it included monitoring of the historic site. The historic site was closed for 2 years, the impacts to that. So there's a lot of things to take into account. But again, the bigger your APE can be, and we're not saying so big that you're, doing an architectural survey of the entire state, but replacement of the Lake Champlain Bridge should have been a generous APE to pick up Chimney Point, all the resources related to it, the historic building across the street, and even including, you can see a little blue-green over there, where the road turns, the restaurant, just to make sure that all of the standing resources and the archaeological resources are taken into account, and including underwater. So lastly, I really wanted to focus on adverse effects. This is the physical destruction and damage to any part or all of a property. It's alterations. And it could be anything that is not consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties and all the applicable guidelines. Number 2 is really the most where we get the adverse effects. Removing a property from its historic location. So particularly if there's a historic district that a resource is in, moving it outside of that historic district is an adverse effect, but it also creates another level of review. We have to go to the National Register of Historic Places, justify why it needs to be moved outside of the boundaries, what integrity it will retain. So for example, we did the New Haven Depot where we picked it up and moved that in cooperation with VTrans. We had to notify the National Register why it was being moved because it was so close. We had to really justify that it needed to be relocated for the safety of the Amtrak, the riders of the trains, the drivers on the road right there, and also the building itself. Then we had to justify where it was going to be located and how it could still retain its integrity and be significant. We argued, I felt very strongly that it still would retain its integrity as a railroad station under criterion A, and as well as architecture under criterion C. The National Register felt that because it was no longer associated with railroad tracks, that it was in a downtown, it no longer was eligible under criterion A, but it was still eligible under criterion C. So it's still listed on the National Register. So please remember that moving something also brings in another level of review of 30 days with the National Register. Changes to the character or the property's use, physical features that affect its setting, that contribute to its historic significance. Again, the New Haven Depot is another good example of that. We were moving it completely out of its context. Introducing visual, atmospheric, or audible elements that diminish the integrity, neglect of a property also, and then the sale or lease. But we try to work with all of the federal state agencies that come to us with projects because we want to make sure that alterations are understood, justifiable, that impacts to a non-historic resource like a bridge will not necessarily impact the historic buildings right next to it or the archaeological sites. I would say more so archaeological sites are being impacted by bridges and road constructions. So that's where we need to be careful and do those assessments well ahead of time. So again, I really want to stress that submittals need to go to accd.projectreview@vermont.gov. You are more than welcome to CC staff to make sure that somebody's alerted that you've been working with. But the primary submittal needs to go to this project review mailbox. Otherwise, we don't start considering it as a project that we would have formally submitted, and we don't want to delay anything. We really respect the 15-day, the 30-day, and the 3-day, of course, for emergencies, but we want to be very sure that we've got all the materials. So again, I also want to stress, if something is missing from your submittal, but it's coming, please let us know. And as projects change, please let us know. Thank you very much. So I can stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Laura. I really appreciate that. And I think it was really helpful, particularly talking about the APE and how we need to scale these things appropriately based on the undertaking. And, you know, it's bigger is always better in that case. Like you said, you don't go overboard. But it's a really good reminder for our staff, you know, personally at FEMA and just, you know, staff in general. I think it's a really good thing to remember.
Yeah, it's just like, you know, you're working on your house. You think you're going to replace the floorboards on the porch, and then you find out when you pull them up that the whole thing's rotted underneath, right? So it's easier to go bigger and to study where you could have potential areas for staging and access. And when you're looking at the site, some of those places will jump out. Like, this would be perfect for staging. Let's include it. Let's get it reviewed. Even if you don't use it, we've had it reviewed. It's clear. It might be perfect.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd rather have potential staging areas or potential access areas called out that aren't used. And then at least we've already identified resources there, you know, put in that effort and we've considered impacts. So great. Well, I'll open the floor to any questions anybody has for Laura. And any questions you might have in general on anything we covered in these 4 sessions. You know, we have Jeff here from the Stockbridge Muncie community. We have Laura here from the SHPO office and some of her staff as well. So really, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or come off mic. All right, seeing no hands, I won't keep everybody. I just want to thank everyone who was involved in this MOA, in this training seminar that we have done over the last several months. I really appreciate Jeff and Sarah from the Stockbridge Muncie community being here with us, presenting in the last session. Laura, I appreciate your input today from the SHPO's perspective. This has been really helpful to get both FEMA's perspective, the SHPO perspective, and the TIPO perspective as well. And I really want to thank all the staff from VAOT, VTrans, them, everyone from the state who was able to attend this, and all of the FEMA staff members who were able to attend. As Laura said, you know, we have good relationships, and by doing, you know, an adverse effect, it's a process, but we build stronger relationships and we learn how to do things better. And so I think that's really what this training has been about. And, you know, future projects will be stronger. And I'm just thankful for those relationships that we have and that we continue to build on. So if anybody has any questions after this, feel free to send an email. Laura, you were going to add something else?
I think Kyle put a question in the chat.
Thank you. I did not see that. If I could actually open that up, I'm sorry. Okay, when there is a change in construction, is there a Region 1 overlap EHP email to start a change review? So Kyle, what you would do is you would go through your PDMG for this, and you would submit your project change. You can also, because you have our emails, Kyle, you can feel free to email Mary, Catherine, and myself, the staff members that you have worked with, and notify us of that change. That way it'll get to us faster. We're always happy to have those conversations and walk through what has changed and continue our consultation as necessary. So yes, please reach out, but yeah, notify your program contact at FEMA and let them know that there is a change, and then you can give us the heads up as well.
Okay, thank you. PDMG is long gone. It's an older disaster. And
Gotcha.
I sent the change on Friday. And I just wanted to make sure, when Laura talked about the overall SHPO office email, I just want to make sure you guys didn't have one that I was missing out on. Or
So we do, and Kyle, I can send that to you. So you have that, and actually, sorry, let me just grab. I always forget exactly how what the email address is. It's basically just our overall historic preservation inbox. So I'm sorry, give me 1 second.
Yeah, and
No
I'll
worries.
say to Kyle, I think I was on your email with that request. It's for the DR 4445 project. I
Yeah,
think
that's
yeah.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and we are working on it. We've got right now the FEMA Navigator team in Vermont, which I'm on, although from the environmental side, not the HP side. So we've been working actively, and we happen to also review these projects from that disaster a few years ago. So we've received your request, and I've checked it. I think it's all okay on the environmental side, and I forwarded that to Catherine Emmett because she did the consultation, the original consultation, to see if she thinks we need to go back. They've asked for a different access route, basically, into the railroad project. So I've asked Catherine her opinion if she thinks this falls under the past consultation adequately, or if we need to reconsult. So just waiting for an
Okay.
answer.
No, that's great. That's good to know. I guess I just wanted to double check. As you guys said earlier, my request goes directly to FEMA. You guys decide whether or not it needs to go and kind of be reopened up, and then you contact SHPO and TIPO if there is something to rediscuss based on the change.
Mhm.
I don't need to copy SHPO and TIPO when I reach out to you directly.
I'd say that's up to them. I don't know if you want that level of heads up.
It certainly wouldn't hurt, Kyle.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
All right. I wanted to just double check because you had mentioned that you know, the federal agency is the lead. I just didn't want to give you guys more work if it didn't really need to go your way, or
Yeah, I think Kyle, also you guys will need to notify Army Corps. That's maybe the biggest thing on the environmental side for that, because it is a wetland, mapped as a wetland.
okay.
And they'd probably want that amendment in their permit. And they would probably also check with us on the historic preservation coverage. We did draw a large enough area for our Endangered Species Act consultation that I'm comfortable that's covered.
Okay.
But the historic, I cannot opine to.
All right. Yeah, I'm good either way, copying whoever I need to. I just want to make sure I'm not overreaching or underreaching.
No,
No,
Kyle,
I'm glad you reached.
Okay.
absolutely. No, and Kyle, yeah, if you wanna include, you know, the Laura's staff inbox as well, I think that makes sense. But you're correct in that process. You know, you reached out to us, as Linda said, we're reviewing it on the EHP side of the house, and then if we need to open up consultation again, we will. If it falls under things, at least Laura and her staff have that visibility of what has changed. And then we can just, you know, let them know, oh, it fell under the previous consultation, or it did not. So we're gonna resume consultation. But thank you, Linda, for providing the input on that one, since you were actually the one who received the email. And thank you, Kyle, for reaching out and letting us know of that change as soon as you know about it.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Excellent. Okay, great. Well, just making sure. Okay, good. I don't see anything else in the chat. Thank you, Flora, for flagging that, because I had missed that. And if there's nothing else, thank you all again so much. And I will be sending out the links to the state and the tribe, so everyone has the 4 session links. They've been uploaded to our YouTube channel. This one will be here later today if our external affairs people are able to get it on there. And that way you can share this training as you want. And for people who are not able to make all 4 of the sessions, you can watch them at your leisure. So thank you all again. I appreciate it. And with that, I'll close things out. Have a wonderful day.